Hey, Steve, it's Mike and Jay from the Detroit Cast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. How you guys doing?
Very well, thanks.
Doing good. We've really enjoyed your book, buddy. I got to be honest.
That's cool. God damn, that's great, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
And it should
I
mean
don't get much love from Detroit, man.
really.
No, not a word from Detroit media.
Come on.
No kidding. There's so many great references to Detroit and Metro Detroit, especially all throughout this book.
That's a huge part of what I loved about it. The local tie-ins are endless.
Yeah, this is what we thought. I'm always surprised by that when they don't. I don't get anything from. I don't know. It's weird.
How's the book doing otherwise?
I think it's doing really well. I mean, I don't never know, and I don't pay attention. I don't run around going, "Geez, I wonder if it sold. How many copies?"
Mm-hmm.
I know my best knowledge is when the statement comes.
Yeah, there you go.
After
There you go.
6 months. Next in March, I'll have an idea.
Well, the book is called Juggalo, Insane Clown Posse and the World They Made. And like I said, Jay and I were not really fans of this band, but we really have gotten a lot out of this book. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you've got quite a background. I mean, you wrote Detroit Rock City, which was a great book. Tons of great quotes in that. And written for U.S. News and World Report, Dallas Morning News, the Washington Times. What made you decide to write about ICP and the Juggalos?
Well, I mean, I do true crime, and that's really a lot of crime and court stuff is my background. But I just was, I mean, and I love music, and I got turned on to ICP in the '90s, and they were always in my rotation musically, and I didn't really follow the whole movement, the Juggalos and so on, until I got kind of aware of this FBI thing, and I'm thinking, well, how could you cast a whole following of a band as a gang? And I thought that kind of it irritated me, and I thought, well, first of all, it's not fair. Second of all, it approaches a First Amendment violation, and so all these things kind of added up to me, and I thought, well, what are these cops trying to do? And the more I read about it, and the more records I reviewed, just the more interested I got in a book trying to explain what Juggalos were and how ICP, these two working class guys, had created, and then how to see this kind of go awry. Hey, it's just the outright hatred for these guys made me like them. Even if I didn't like their music, which I do, I just thought, if anybody can irritate everybody this much, there must be something interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned the designation of Juggalos as a gang. I think that was first done in the 2011 gang assessment, right? That came out doing that.
That's correct.
And how and why the heck did they get on the FBI radar, and how did this happen?
Well, it came through a series of regional reports, like reports in states, like up in Wisconsin and so on, if you can believe that. I mean, what is Wisconsin doing a gang report for anyway? Right. And then, Salt Lake City, they had something out there, California. And so, these local entities would be saying, well, we're having a problem with Juggalo gangs. And obviously they were mistaken just because these people wore, similar clothing and so on. They were making these mistakes to think, well, this must be why they're committing the crimes, because they're connected to this horrorcore outfit that really just preaches fantasy, along the lines of Stephen King.
Yeah.
And so they must think that these devotees must be all linked together somehow.
Right. They would essentially arrest some punk somewhere and he'd be wearing an ICP T-shirt or have a Hatchet Man tattoo, and they'd go, oh, he's one of the gang members with the Juggalos.
Right.
Yeah.
What was worse, what I found as I reviewed it was worse is when I did a huge Nexus search for articles related to this, to gang activity and Juggalos. The newspaper accounts would all reflect that. They would, if the cops told them, well, this is a Juggalo, part of the Juggalo gang, the newspaper reporter would just repeat that. And I thought, well, you really, as a journalist, you should be more, really question that. That would have been the first stop. But they didn't. They just kept in that fostered a reality, a kind of a fake reality.
Steve, I've bitched about our bullshit media for years. The lazy journalism that goes on, it's incredible to me. And the more you pay attention to it, the more glaringly obvious it becomes what's going on. It's
Yeah.
sad, but there's real world consequences. Like I would think, like Jay and Shaggy did at first, like, hey, cool, any press is good press. And now we're on
Right.
now they've ruled us a gang. Like I could see having that same kind of attitude, but it's not really the right attitude to have.
Yeah, what does it mean to be practically
No.
termed as a gang? I mean, there's real world consequences to that.
And they felt that right away, of course, because first of all, you're going to have to start paying more insurance to get booked, because now it could be considered a gang activity, and also they were losing bookings as well. Your gear, your merch is not going to get carried in certain places, so they felt it in that way. And then I think what the deal was, I think the feds and some of these local law enforcement agencies, they didn't realize that somebody would fight back, and that they had the resources to fight back. You saw in one of the FBI intel reports, it said, that the ICP, their music isn't good enough to get played on the radio, as if that's sort of some sort of litmus test for credibility.
Yeah, Metallica heard the same thing.
Yeah, there you go. So at any rate, what they thought was, well, they don't have any resources, and these are they're just bad actors, and read their lyrics. This will tell you what they're all about. Never mind ignoring the lyrics of countless bands before them that dealt with fantasy subjects.
The gathering of the Juggalos, they do, I guess, and I've never been, but they do a kind of a State of the Union thing where they get up and kind of just an overall State of the Union and what's going on in the world, and
Seminar.
Yeah, seminar. And you mentioned, I think it was I'm not sure what year it was, but they get into the suing the FBI and getting their lawyers on that. And I thought it was really kind of interesting hearing that after that announcement, they go back to their trailer, Jay and Shaggy, and Jay actually started to cry.
They were really emotional about it. It was, this was a big deal to them, obviously. They really wanted to, they had to do it. I think they realized, to their credit, they realized the implications of suing the feds, what that would mean, and how much work that would be, and just how difficult it can be to do, to undertake something like that. And you're putting yourself on the line. You made yourself a target. I think we already saw, let's see, it was Shaggy that got audited by the IRS. And generally the IRS is going to find something. So you're making yourself a target.
Well, and it sounds like these guys are genuinely concerned about the Juggalos, too. It's not just them and their business. Oh, how is this going to affect us? But the fact is, when you're termed a gang member, that ramps up your criminal charges. It makes them broader and longer. If you're caught with drugs or doing whatever.
Yeah.
And so they were fighting not just for themselves, but for the Juggalo movement. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I got that feeling. I really, obviously as journalists, you're going to like, well, are they in this just for some personal gain? Are they being hit like this? Are they looking for some sort of, is this a response to a financial hit they're taking? Is this a publicity play? And I really didn't find that at all. They were sincerely concerned that people that had bought their records and their T-shirts and really followed them were being castigated and, again, like you say, subject to enhanced punishment under the gang statutes. And so that was they were really concerned. I had a moment where I talked with the federal, the attorney on the federal side after a court hearing in downtown Detroit in the case of psychopathic versus the FBI. And we were standing on the steps of the courthouse afterwards, and she was really nice. And I was talking to her about it, and then she said, well, this lawsuit, it's good for the brand, sticking it to the man. And I thought, well, I could see that's a perspective to take. I didn't find that at all. I didn't find that it probably is as a byproduct, but
Sure.
I feel they really do care. I mean, now we got a march on Washington coming and so on. So
yeah, next year. Well,
next year.
To put it in perspective, you tell the story in the book about the kid in Grand Junction, Colorado, who gets into a drunken fight with his buddy and ends up stabbing him in the shoulder. And they charge him, and then they realize they've got ICP gear on or tattoos, and they immediately go, oh, it's gang related, and so they charge him with attempted murder.
Yeah, he got a felony assault, and they were just in a drunk fight, and he stabbed him in the shoulder. Yeah, he got a felony assault, and the prosecutor filed a motion to enhance the charge. because the guy was, when he was in the act, he was wearing an ICP T-shirt.
So just to see through this thought about the lawsuit, then we do have some questions about the gathering in particular. But where does the lawsuit stand? My understanding is it went before Judge Cleland downtown. It got dismissed pretty readily, and then it went to the Sixth Circuit. ICP actually won that, got it remanded. And if I'm reading the docket right, it looks like there's another motion to dismiss up right now.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct. There is, and these happen. They just keep coming. But the bottom line is they have to. The judge is going to have to decide. And I think that the higher court, the Sixth Circuit, remanded it back to the original court, and it's clear he's going to have to hear it again.
So regardless of what happens in that court case, though, they're marching on Washington, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you see that happening?
I speculate that in the book, actually, and I was kind of surprised that when it materialized, because I had heard murmurings of it before, but in the epilogue of the book, I talk about it, and it's if they thought if it was going to go to the Supreme Court initially, I think it was Shea told me, he said, well, if it's going to go to the last place it ended up would be the U.S. Supreme Court. He said if that were the case, there's going to be, Jay had said that there would be a march, on Washington. Well, they're not even waiting for the march on Washington now. So they're just going to do it. And I think it'd be interesting to see the music industry and the entertainment industry come together at some sort of, in a stance against, this kind of thing, oppression of a fan base, or even on a First Amendment ground. In the book, I talk about Two Live Crew. I talked to them about how their case played out. Remember, they were harassed on First Amendment grounds too.
Luther Campbell.
Luther Campbell. And so it's we'll see. It's definitely the march is going to happen. It sure ought to be fun, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So why not? I don't know how they're going to handle the Fago.
Yeah, good question. Now, can we go on to the gathering? As I mentioned, Steve, Jay and I have never been to a gathering, which is I'll let you explain what it is, but it's kind of a 4-day long festival that they have every year. How would you explain it to someone who's never been?
Here's the thing. I have I don't have much context for what these are, but it's just a 4-day festival where all the people go that are fans of ICP. From what I can gather, the price isn't exorbitant, but people, the Juggalos, some of them, this is they have a vacation, a brief vacation every year, because a lot of them are working at service jobs and so on. But they all come together and they all hang out for 4 days. Most of them camp on these grounds, and you got during the day you've got a midway, shows and little things, rides and vendors and so on, and you'll have on smaller stages you'll have performers, and you'll have wrestling and seminars. And then at night, you've got, starting around 6 o'clock, you've got entertainment that goes all night. And
it certainly sounds like it's evolved over the years. I think it started at Novi Expo Center. And and now, like you say, is more open air out in the country somewhere where people can really whoop it up.
Yeah, this year was the 17th.
Yeah.
That's right. It's this great aquarium of humanity.
Yeah, I've watched a few snippets on Vimeo. It's interesting. But you tell some great stories in the book just about maybe some people who have appeared there who didn't fully appreciate what they were in for, maybe like a Tila Tequila, maybe.
Well, Tila that was really terrible. I mean, and I've been asked about that. People go, how can you defend that? And I said, there's no way to defend that. Nobody had ever defended what happened. And I guess the best thing I could say is what happened for the listeners is Tila Tequila was booked to play there, and she started off wrong because she was posting on social, and it was clear that she didn't understand the Juggalo culture, and she was just acting stupid, and and they I think the Juggalos took her whole attitude as an insult.
Yeah, she was like an MTV diva kind of attitude, right?
Yeah, she was an MTV diva, and they just didn't, they didn't dig her being there. And so she shows up, and they had already said, you're deep shit. You show up here, anyway. And before she even went on, they told her, you don't have to go out there because it's looking bad. These people are angry.
Yeah,
and she
didn't
said,
Jay just tell her, hey,
on.
here's your money. It's yours whether you go on or not.
Keep it.
Yeah. And, in fairness to her, that takes real guts to head out there and do that. I mean, this is, she may be a diva, but she was showing she was pretty tough to go out there. And, of course, they
stoned her.
They stoned her. I guess we could say that, couldn't we?
And then they ran her back to her trailer and almost,
they were shaking her car. Yeah, it was terrible. And it was a really bad situation. And I guess if you've ever seen a crowd commit some act of violence, it is really intimidating. It's really scary. And the people I've talked to that were there, they were really scared. Mm-hmm. And just how this group was acting. And but in the end, she got out of there. For the book, I tried to reach out to her. She didn't respond. I thought that'd be really interesting. Because remember, she was threatening, I'm going to sue them. Blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a weird, even like, who would think to book that? You would think Tila Tequila and what she stands for goes so against anything the Juggalos stand for. And so I don't know who thought that was a good idea to even attempt to make that booking.
But then you've got issues like Vanilla Ice and MC Hammer who were hugely successful there and accepted because they got it, and they were able to play to the crowd a bit.
I think that's right. Vanilla Ice, I mean, he professes, he loves Juggalos. He says he's a Juggalo and so on and so forth. He considers himself a Juggalo.
How did MC Hammer do so well too? MC Hammer seems like
I know. Like you'd get shot or something.
Well, and he was so cool about it. They said, he was nervous initially. What happened before the gathering, he was in Detroit for a show. And Jay and Shaggy went to the show. They were invited to go to the show. They came out and they came out on stage with him. And they got to talk to him and kind of, I think Hammer was a little nervous, but they talked him down a little bit. And they told him, they said, well, you do MC Hammer does this entry to the stage where he walks through the crowd. They said, well, probably don't want to do that at the gathering. Yeah. There he was, man. He shows up at the gathering. There he is. He's running through the crowd.
With the big pants.
Hit the stage.
That's awesome.
With the big pants with the balloon pants. Yeah, looking all 80s.
Well, another cool aspect about the gathering, and this is a huge theme in your book, I think, is the fact that there's no corporate sponsors. There's really no big label behind these guys at all, and just the grassroots beginnings of these guys and how they built it.
I did a lot of research there. Again, the context for these big open air shows and these festivals, I don't have any. I wouldn't think of going to Coachella or any of those. It just seems horrible. But the one thing I noticed is when you go to those web pages, how this onslaught of corporate interests selling you immediately. Like, we're sponsoring this, that. I mean, McDonald's has a tent at South by Southwest. Mm. These just became these horrible corporate gangbangs, and they're just there to sell. That's all they want to do.
Right.
Well, the gathering is nothing like that. First of all, obviously, the corporations don't believe there's any way to make a whole lot of money off the Juggalos, because it's all about making money off people. How can you get them to part with their consumer dollars? And the Juggalo, you go to a gathering, there is not a touch of corporate activity there. And I think it's kind of cool. They could do it all on their own. I mean, these festivals, these big major corporate festivals, they couldn't do that without the interest of AT&T and Budweiser.
It seems like Faygo obviously would just be the natural connection with these guys. I wonder why. It's surprising to me. I know,
two mom and pop,
but the ICP is kind of mom and pop too, and very grassroots. You would just think these two kind of underground brands could make some sort of corporate connection on some level,
Yeah, I know. And Jay told me, he said they should do like a microphone endorsement with the Faygo dripping off the mic or something like that. Yeah. His idea was, this is a mic tough enough for any band, and Faygo's dripping off it. It still works. But no, and in fact, detail in the book that the Faygo honchos, they'd had meetings over the idea of trying to tie themselves to the discussing just the concept of the link to ICP and Juggalos. But it's just, and as he says, it was just, the thought was, this is a group that is not in the general population, and that their message is the opposite of what this family brand would want. I don't know what a family brand is really, but.
Well, I love the Faygo stuff. I didn't know until I read your book that they only use diet Faygo on stage.
Yeah, because it doesn't have all the sugar that can decay.
Peels
like
the paint.
Floor. Yeah, peels the paint off the gear and so on. But so when you're on stage during a show, of course, it just smells like Faygo root beer, and it's pretty funny. Although it was the first time I ever I think I was in Los Angeles and I stood on stage to watch a show, and I was amazed at how just the smell, the overwhelming smell. As soon as they started flipping it open, and started spraying it, it was just permeated everything.
And they have to travel with their own. They order it from Michigan and get these pallets sent out on the road with them, and they're like $20,000 worth of Faygo for a tour, and yeah, and it's so heavy they can't carry more than like a couple shows worth at a time.
Sure, and they have to keep replenishing at different places, and so they'll okay, we got to pick up the Faygo, and that's a real. Can you imagine? That's an ongoing concern, logistically. As if they don't have enough to think about. You've got to worry about the Faygo being there. They had to cancel. It was at least one show they had to cancel, and the Faygo didn't show up.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it was in Phoenix, wasn't it? Or it wasn't diet or something.
It was in Arizona, and they just logistically, everything broke down, and they said, "Wow, we just can't do the show without the Faygo." They had a show here. I'm in Lansing right now. They had a show canceled because they had 2 nights booked. This is in June. They had 2 nights booked, and the first night they came out and they did the Faygo thing, and the Faygo. Whoever the promoter wasn't prepared, didn't do their homework. The Faygo leaked through the ceiling of the venue into the establishment below, and so the second night they said, "Listen, you can't use the Faygo tonight." And ICP said, "Well, no Faygo, you have no show." That's
really funny, and then they run into issues too. They've had trial and error over the years where it's like if it got too hot, the Faygo would start exploding in the pallets or on the truck.
Yeah, they got to make sure it stays cool. It was fun. It was fun trying to figure out how this all works. I thought, God, you hear about all kinds of things, but in terms of it's a whole new kind of thing, element to like Spinal Tap. It's not it doesn't deal with little fake Stonehenge stuff.
Well, the book we're talking about is Insane Clown Posse and the World They Made, Juggalo, by Steve Miller, who's on the line with us right now. Thank you so much for the time, Steve. I feel like we've taken enough of your time, but there's a lot of cool shit in this book about the fans, the experience, the grassroots nature of it, the whole southeast Michigan and Detroit aspect of it. It's very interesting and a very good read. So I hope you do well with it.
Oh, well, thanks so much, you guys. I appreciate your time today.
Okay, buddy. Steve. Take care, man.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to visit DetroitCast.com for all new episodes of the Detroit Cast with Mike and Jay.